Okay guys, the second episode of Moon Knight is now out, and with the episode came some massive new story elements to talk about going forward, so let's get right into it. Straight away we jump into Steven's apartment right after the events of the first episode. He wakes up in a panic and then goes to the mirror where he first met Mark Spector. This shot has another really nice trick with mirrors like we saw in the first episode, particularly emphasizing his struggle at looking himself in the mirror, now knowing that he's a whole different person to who he thought he was originally. As last week's episode proved, Oscar Isaac is incredibly capable of making you feel sorry for the character of Stephen Grant through his consistent use of his weird British accent, which feels really timid and feeble. It's really fitting for his character and I actually really like it. They take their portrayal of mental health very carefully, especially other characters helping Stephen and having a lot of patience and understanding of what he's going through. For example, Layla changing their escape plan to accommodate his struggle, and when the museum manager offers him a leaflet to some doctors who can help him out with his condition. Speaking of the leaflet, this could potentially be foreshadowing for a future episode. As we see in the TV spots, he seems to be in some sort of mental hospital, similar to something you see in Lemire's comic run. The episode has some interesting stylistic choices. We get more of the typical horror lighting in another hallway chase scene. From what we've seen from the TV spots for the series, there seems to be a lot of these hallway scenes, like the white corridor I just mentioned a minute ago. There's a really odd moment where the scene just kind of freezes on Steven screaming after running into Khonshu. It really took me out of the moment first because I thought that my phone had just frozen while watching it for the first time, but I really applaud the boldness of trying something different even if the results weren't really what I would have wanted from it. We might have actually gotten a little more explanation of the character's history within the MCU as well. Among the items found in the bag in the storage lockup is Mark Spector's passport, on which we can clearly make out that the date it was issued was 2018, specifically December 2018. The events of Infinity War happened earlier in that year, meaning that he must have survived the snap in the MCU continuity. I'm grateful that they never directly addressed this with exposition, because I feel like that over the last couple of years they've been delving way too much into Endgame and Infinity War and the effects of that, so I'm just happy that they're not directly bringing that back up again, like WandaVision for example. As we mentioned last week, Marvel seems to be simplifying the personalities of Moon Knight compared to the comic book counterparts. In a bold move that has seemingly upset a portion of comic book Twitter, they've streamlined the persona of Mr. Knight into just being the suit of Stephen Grant. So therefore, in the same way Moon Knight is one in the same as Mark Spector, Mr. Knight is just Stephen Grant's superhero persona. Look, I understand why people have a lot of distaste towards this, but personally I found it to be quite enjoyable. But I totally get it. The MCU has a lot of influence over what the comics do going forwards, and I feel like this shouldn't be one of those things that should be fitted back into the comics, because it definitely was made this way just to fit a 6-part series, as to not clutter it up with too many characters and confusing the audience. This would mean that the powers imbued by Khonshu reside inside the body and not within the individual personalities like in the comics. They definitely tried to introduce a bit more slapstick comedy into this episode. The moment that really stood out to me was when Mr. Knight is finally revealed and then he just lands on the floor and slowly falls over in the superhero pose. It really exhibited Stephen's incompetence and works as a moment building towards his growing confidence over the next scene. When he has the suit on, he finally feels strong enough to talk back to Mark a bit as well, which is kind of funny, because they seem to have this ongoing rivalry over the whole episode, and it's kind of funny to see him finally talk back to him now he's got the suit on. He does manage to fight back against the Jackal for a bit, but eventually has to give up control of the body so Mark can take over so there aren't any unnecessary casualties. This really portrays Stephen as an empathetic character and just wants to do what's right, even after his ongoing battle against Mark this whole episode. The villain Harrow definitely gets a bit more development and character exploration this episode too. He tries to show Stephen that he's really a good guy, but ultimately Stephen is unfazed and stands up for himself with the help of Layla. The same song from the start of the first episode, Every Grain of Sand by Bob Dylan, plays again here. It has a lot of religious connotations to it and definitely fits in with the theme of the series and the characters themselves. Additionally, we learn that Harrow was once Khonshu's avatar. This forms an interesting dynamic between him and Moon Knight as they share similar experiences. His plan definitely resembles the Day of Reckoning from religious beliefs, specifically how he's judging people's mistakes and misdeeds, but this time preemptively. He even goes so far to describe it as heaven on earth. There's an ongoing unraveling of Stephen's whole life. It seems that he's been created with different aspects and cuttings of Mark's life. His favourite poet is actually Layla's. This honestly reminds me of the movie Free Guy, where the main character is actually just a creation featuring someone else's favourite things, just to try and please them. Finally, at the end of the episode, we get some more action, as Steven and Layla have to face off with a jackal, who Layla can't actually see until she throws a bottle at it. They did a good job at showing how the jackals work earlier in the episode, and it kind of serves this scene pretty well, but the whole invisible gimmick got old pretty quick, and I thought it was drawn out a little bit too much. I absolutely adore the scene of Moon Knight running across the rooftops. It was as if it was ripped straight from the comic book pages. The score, not just for the scene, for the whole episode and the last one too, was very impressive, giving a real spectral and mystic vibe. To close out the episode, we travelled to Egypt, without any sort of weird filter on it like other interpretations of that region of the world, even if they're meant to be Egypt or not actually meant to be Egypt at all. I find it interesting that he took the mirror that he previously smashed in London the scene before with him, because we can see that Steven is still in the mirror. You can see that they're in completely different positions, and doesn't have the strength to move around the reflection like Mark does. Like he was saying earlier, he probably doesn't even have the strength to like be a fly on the wall or something. Okay, so that's going to wrap up our Moon Knight episode 2 breakdown and review. Hopefully the show can stick to the standard of the first 2 episodes. They've been really good. I've been Will, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Wagwan! I did it! You got planted! Layla! Did you see that?
Thank you so much for watching. If you liked what you saw here today, then please consider subscribing to catch our other content as and when it releases.